Hi everybody, I'm going to cover a lot of material. I'm going to talk very fast, so at the end I'm going to give you a summary, so you don't need to take too many notes. There's a lot to cover. But let me start by understanding where we are. Who has ever been contest chair? Who has ever been chief judge? Who has ever been involved in running an area or a division contest? And who is thinking that they might get involved this year? Right, okay. The Toastmaster strapline is where leaders are made, and I think that one of the roles that most develops the skill of leadership is being involved in running a speech contest. And it doesn't matter which one it is, whether it's a club or an area or a division, because they're all essentially the same. The only difference is that the area and the division ones, there's a little bit more to it in terms of there's more people involved, there's maybe a venue to deal with, but essentially it's all the same thing. And it all starts with this little baby, the speech contest rule book. Now this is a brilliant thing. I've just printed it off here. Unfortunately, the new one is not yet up, otherwise I'd have brought you that. Because they can, Toastmasters now amend it every year. And it's good that they do, but they are also very good. They put a little sideways diamond where they've made a change. So the very first rule to running a speech contest is to download the current version of this. Hopefully there will be a 2015 one before too long, and to read all the little diamonds. And I suggest that everybody reads. There's about 17 pages there. It's not an easy read, but read the whole lot, because if you're running it, if you're chief judge or if you're contest chair, you really do need to know everything that's involved, at least go through it. The thing about this though is that it is very complete. It covers everything, except it's a rule book. It is not a how to run a speech contest book. And we sometimes think it is, and it isn't. So what I'm going to do is cover some of the things that ain't in here and that are going to trip you up, and that have tripped me up. So that's what this is all about. And I'm going to reiterate, and I'm glad it's been said here, is to set your dates early. Set your dates as now, with your first committee meeting. You know when they should be. The club meeting should be. I've put some timetables down. I'm maybe not strictly accurate, but my understanding is that the club contest should be the first meeting in September or the first meeting in March. And if you don't do that, it means that whoever wins hasn't got much time before the area contest. And there is always a big improvement between a speech that's delivered at a club and what's delivered at the area level, so you need to give them time. The other thing is, as soon as you get the area and the division dates, pass them on, because people do get busy. And we had at the division contest this time, the person who won couldn't go forward because he had something else involved for the district competition. It had its advantages, but nevertheless, people need to know when they're ready. So that's the very first thing to do. I also suggest, we're talking about newsletters and things, I think it's a really good practice for a president to send a monthly newsletter, and I think those dates should be at the bottom, because people forget, and if it's there on every newsletter that comes through once a month, then it positions the contest as being something important, something that matters to the club, and something for them to refer to. I also, sorry, and you can already put it into easy speak. Yes, absolutely, yes, of course. The other thing to do early is to appoint your contest chairs and your chief judges early. For the September ones, obviously immediately, but also think about appointing them for the March ones, because then they can shadow what's being done in September, and they can learn. So if that's possible, then that's a really good thing. The chief judge has a couple of things to do which I think are important. One of the things that they do is they appoint all judges for the contest. Now at club level, it's easy. If you're not a speaker and if you're not involved, you're a judge. Because we have so few people, usually by the time all the speakers and everybody have been taken out, that anybody else who's there is a judge. But at area and division levels, it's a very different matter. At area and division levels, we need equal representation from either the clubs or the areas. And too often, I think, what's happened is that we look around, the organiser looks around and he sees, right, who is going to be coming, and then asks them to be judges. I think we need to take it a lot more seriously. I think at area and division level, we should be looking for people who have the skill, who have the experience, to be able to recognise a speech that can be developed to win at the next level. Because because that's the purpose. We want them to get through to the next level. So we need people who are judges who can understand that. The other role that the chief judge appoints is the tie-break judge. And again, I think this should be taken much more seriously than usual than it is currently, because again, it needs to be somebody who understands what's going to be required at the next level. I've been at a contest where the tie-break judge was somebody who was at their first ever conference. The chief judge appointed them tie-break judge because they thought, well, we're not going to need them in the judging, so it's better that they're just there as a backup. And in point of fact, they ended up choosing who went through. And they chose on criteria which really weren't necessarily the best criteria. Finally, there is a very good video on the TMI website, which is about being a judge, and I think everybody should be encouraged to watch that video. It's a very good one. Now, I said this is not a how-to manual, and two roles which are barely mentioned in here, which are vital, are, well, first of all, timekeeper. Now, my bacon was very soundly saved by Gillian during the recent division timetable, during the recent division contest, because in my first candidate interview, I went over and I thought I'd gone over, and Gilly was sitting there going, and I thought, yeah, I definitely went over. But there's also a lot of subtleties in being a timekeeper. For instance, at some of these bigger contests, the person speaking doesn't necessarily start with using words. It might be a non-verbal start. Timekeepers need to check that, because very often they're sat there listening, watching their clock, ready to go. They're not watching the stage. They need to know, have they got to watch for a visual cue. They're also, again, at the higher levels, there may be other people who need to be timed. And don't be fooled into thinking, well, anybody can be timekeeper, because actually they need to be pretty good at it, especially on the evaluators and the table topics competitions, because it's only a minute or two, then they've got to do the minute for the evaluations, and then they've got to be ready to set the next one. So it should be somebody who has done quite a bit of timekeeping in the club, so they're completely confident with it. The other role, which is barely mentioned in the rule book, is that of Sergeant at Arms. I think Lisa at the last contest would say that the first thing you need is a pair of running shoes, because her job was to bring the speaker in at the back of the room and then go trundling up to the front of the room to take the lectern back or put the lectern forward and then go running back to the end. And she was back up and down like a yo-yo. But again, the Sergeant at Arms really do have a lot to do, particularly in the evaluation contest. But they also need to announce things like when the judges and the contestants' briefing start, and all of those sort of things need to be covered. This is a list that I gave to Lisa and Alison before our division contest of all the things that they need to announce and they needed to be aware of. It was quite substantial, and that all got done about 6:30 in the morning, because I suddenly realised how much there was of it, and they needed something to work from. Paperwork. Unfortunately, we fell a few trees when we run the speech contest. There's an awful lot of paperwork involved. Now, at club level, and Andrew certainly did it on our last competition, it should be possible to collect most of the paperwork in advance. People know in advance, and you can get it all done by email. But at a division or an area contest, it ain't going to happen. And if anybody is supposed to be bringing their judging eligibility form or whatever, assume they won't. So bring lots of blank copies, because they won't. They'll swear that they will and they'll intend to, but they won't. The other thing that a speech contest is great for, it's a great PR opportunity, really good PR opportunity. Great way to involve your local press. You could try inviting them to come, but that might be hard. But certainly do send a press release out afterwards. In that press release, enclose a really good photograph. Make sure it's high res, because if it's going into the press, it needs to be high res. If it's going online, they can trim it down. I would suggest that it's a nice idea to have the picture you send shows all the winners with all the certificates, but also has a really good strapline at the bottom that says all the people and, if possible, what they do. Because I think it gives a very good indication of the sort of people who are in Toastmasters and the variety of jobs that they do. So I would suggest that that's a good idea to do. In your copy, try and sneak in where and when you meet. So we, at our regular meeting on a Monday evening at the Regent Hotel in Doncaster, we had our speech contest, because reporters are bone idle. If they can just take your text and they can just copy and paste it, then they will do it. If you give them 1,000 words and they have to cut it down to 100 words, they'll probably just take the first paragraph. So if you can include those details, then where and when you meet, it will get included, or it's more chance of getting included. For area and division contests, appoint somebody to take the photographs. Ask them to get a photograph of every time any presentation is made, any certificate is presented, or anything like that, and then put together a nice little press release, a nice little template, send it off to all the area governors or whoever needs it, send them the appropriate photographs, and if you're lucky, they might even send it off to their papers. They might not, but they might. I got a really good idea from the Area 15 contest, which was to print the ballot form, that's the voting form, on the agenda. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I didn't do it at the division, and I wish I had done, because it involves the audience, and it gets people into the idea of thinking that you know, about how they should, or how and when the speech is judged. They can see the criteria, they can do it for themselves, and they get involved, and then they can compare it with the actual results and see what happens. A couple of other things for the area and division contest is to have payment receipts. I forgot about those. I was doing them at 6 o'clock in the morning, and to bring some change and bring a tin and all the rest of it. And it's been talked about. I don't know how people will go on this, but Eventbrite might be a way to go forward for the division and area contests. The advantage of that would be that you could give a discount for early registration, and it could be channeled through the bank account of the organising club, but that's for somebody to look at. Again, at the hotel, if it's the division or the area contest, is to designate one person to be in charge of contacting the hotel. So everybody knows who that is, and it's only one person who's dealing with the hotel rather than being bombarded by lots of different people. I know there's an awful lot of this involved, and that this is a fairly daunting document if it's the first time you've seen. So what I'm going to suggest is that I would be very willing to run a couple of Q&A sessions. I was suggesting one at the end of October, one at the end of July, and one at the end of August. On here I've suggested some dates, and I've put my email address. So if you could pass that on to whoever's organising your club contest, if they want to, if they email me, if I've got enough interest, then I'll run it. I'll do it as a telephone conference call. And I hope this will encourage you to not only take on one of the roles, but actually to enjoy it. And if you've got any questions, if you've got a couple of minutes, I'd be happy to take them.
Can you just remind everybody to download the judging sheets and everything? Because I don't know that comes with this, because it's a